proof of work is the method of decentralization. Miners make the community at the start as kind of a core fundamental to our project. Anyone who has a GPU, a couple of GPUs hanging around, for them to jump in and actually have a go.
Welcome to XXIM Podcast, your home of decentralization. Today, I've got with me Chief, who's building Telestai. Hi, Chief.
Hi, how you going? Lovely to be here. Thank you.
Awesome. So let's start with the very simple one. What is the mission of Telestai, and why did you start it?
It's a good question. So the mission is to obviously shift the paradigm that is currently in existence when it comes to social media. So most of the platforms that people use today are centralized platforms, things like Facebook, Instagram, Threads, X, YouTube, the list goes on and on and on. Yeah. They're all relatively centralized. So those platforms are the primary sort of players in the market. But what they do, which is really huge, is they utilize the existing user content or existing user metadata to fuel both the algorithm and to fuel the advertising revenue that they receive. Right. So our mission is to actually flip that and actually move towards a user-centric, creator-centric platform that prioritizes those two people and what their aims are, rather than actually have the platform drive the agenda.
So I wanna slice it a little bit and really make people understand what are the issues that you're trying to solve, right? And it's not the first time that it's come up, right? Like people perhaps would have heard of what happened during 2016 election in the US with Facebook and all the stuff that was happened back then. And then it came up during, I think, Twitter files when Elon Musk bought Twitter. I think he released a lot of Twitter files. So what was happening in the background with these social media platforms? So I think it'll be good to perhaps recap some of that. And now at least we know these challenges that exist within these platforms, right? But why? Let me ask you, Chief, what made you start this in first place?
It's a little bit of a drawn-out kind of story in one sense. I've sort of been watching the encroachment of this for probably the last 5 or 6 years. I, in particular, was very interested in the algorithm. So I basically reject the premise of an algorithm. I think it is anti-social, and I think it's a way. To me, it is way too close to 1984 from a how people think. And I think a lot of the challenges that exist within the kind of conversations that people are trying to have today exist because of algorithms, consistently offering up content and creating silos or echo chambers for people to basically exist in. And I think that's a huge problem. So me as a human being is very engaged and interested in, good conversation and cultural renewal. Personally, I think culture has to consistently renew itself in order to make progress. And so if you stagnate and if you don't have the conversations required and you don't have the progress in sort of learning and growing as a society, you end up actually degenerating over time. You erode. And I think that is a real problem in today's kind of culture. We are experiencing that. And I think a lot of the frayed edges that you and I have a conversation around or sort of see conversations being taken around is actually the evidence of that fraying. So there's some significant problems currently as a society. So that's sort of something that I've seen probably take place over, I can say 15 years now because I'm getting that old. I've sort of seen that encroachment happen in the last 15 years. It's probably accelerated since the 2016 election, particularly with I can't remember the name of them, even though they're at the tip of my tongue. The group that were involved in, you know who I'm talking about. Yep.
Yeah. I think he'll come back to us for this issue.
Yeah. We'll remember in 10 minutes. But that group that was manipulating the data to understand how to specifically target people on social media.
Is it Analytica?
That's it. Yeah.
Right. Cool.
Yeah. Quantum Analytics or Analytica. Yeah. I know exactly what you mean. So That to me is a warning sign that we are being used. That is a warning sign that we are the user. We is the user of the product, and I'm not actually cognizant of the things that are going on.
Yeah.
So that was a significant thing for me. Watching prior to Twitter being purchased, the issues that were experienced there, I think Elon is a completely different entity in totality, right? He plays his own game. I think it was necessary at some level to have a rebalancing where he purchased that platform, but it still poses its own problems. And it whilst he's an advocate for free speech, it doesn't actually solve the problem that he was trying to solve, which is free and open discourse, right? Because all that happens is you just get two sides splitting across platforms now rather than sitting on both or multiple. So that was sort of bubbling away at the back of my mind. I myself am a creator, so I'm an amateur writer, and I exist in a small community of writers who produce some really interesting work. And a guy that I knew actually wrote a book who he sent me the draft manuscript for it, and I loved it. I thought it was fantastic. It was really, really engaging kind of document. And I said to him, why haven't you got this published yet? And he said, no one's interested. What do you mean no one's interested? And he said, well, it doesn't fit the narrative of what the publishing companies know will make money, and therefore they don't spend any time on it.
I see.
I said, yeah, but mate, you've got like people that would actually engage with this. And he said that they may, but it's still not going to get published in a traditional sense. And I really grappled with that personally. And then as I kind of dug under the surface a little bit, engaging with people like you, you would get zero remuneration from YouTube, from X or anything like that, even though you're producing content that draws people to the platform. And that bugs me a lot because in my mind, like you're the one that's helping to kind of keep the platform alive at some level. All these micro creators that are doing things. And so what I started to begin to believe is that the paradigm in this whole area needs to be flipped to preference the creator and to preference the user and their rights and privileges. Because if we don't sort of flip that paradigm, we're just going to continue to get the same result. And at the moment, we need to change things. So that's what's been bubbling away at the back of my mind. I also didn't like the bannings that were taking place on some of the platforms. I reject the notion that you can't talk about a subject. I hate when I hear the word unalive on someone's TikTok, not because I think the subject is a nice subject, but because I think the word itself is not dangerous. It's a word. Use the correct term. Like, why are we censoring a word? People trying to have actual conversations around that topic cannot because the word is censored. That's ridiculous. So that's the stuff that I've sort of been seeing happen and motivated me to do what I'm doing.
Right. Yeah. I think the way, just for the context for everyone, the way, you reached out to me because you guys are working with Rhubarbarian, right? He's a known figure within the Kaspa ecosystem. We've done an episode with him. Probably I'll put up a link there. Just quickly, what is Rhubarb Media that he runs is helping you guys with?
Yeah, look, he's a wonderful resource, and he has such enormous experience in the space. So, I mean, at a personal level, he's great to just bounce ideas off because he's got so much that I can learn from. From a like an application perspective, he actually has done all the branding for Telestai and our ecosystem platforms such as Lasko and Zoroa. We believe that each of our platforms need an identity and a purpose and a meaning. And he and I see very much eye to eye on how that should be structured and brought to life. He has a very brilliant grasp of how to take ideas and turn them into a brand, essentially, and take them into the assets that create that brand and the visible look and feel of it. And I'm very, very fond of those skills that he has because he's done a brilliant job with everything that he's done for us, and we're very appreciative of it. So he's primarily working with that at the moment and then helping me with some of the social media piece. And we're hoping at some point in the very near future to continue to expand out our ambassador program and get his insights on how we should do that best with Telestai. So that's sort of the way he's interacting with us at the moment. Plus, he's really good to have a chat with and just chew the fat. He's good company.
Yeah, he's good. So the Casper community knows that you guys are working together, or he's working with you. So cool. So let me just get to this straight to the point then. So how are you actually thinking of solving this problem? Like, give me a high level, and then we'll go down the sort of different tiers and try to unpack some of the stuff.
Yep. So there's a few things that we have as fundamentals to the way the ecosystem is built. The first is this GPU-Minable, because our philosophy is GPUs keep the largest decentralization possible, because the people who make the shovels end up using the shovels themselves. So we believe that if you have everyone that can buy consumer hardware to mine the algorithm, that will help to enhance decentralization. And of course, that goes without saying that proof of work is we believe proof of work is the method of decentralization. So that is the only way forward. So we actually worked on a fork of Ravencoin to basically bring the code up to speed and up to scratch, which is something that we're progressively working on. But we tweaked the algorithm to be very lightweight and efficient, and we've actually called it Meraki. What that means is you get rates that are very much similar to Ethereum mining from how heavy it is on the actual GPU. So that is something that we're quite happy about, because we wanted a lightweight but ASIC resistant algorithm to actually push the platform forward. So that's sort of how we've gone about it to start with.
One thing, why? So you're building, the very high level, right? You're building your own blockchain. So you guys decided, hey, we need to have it. We can't build this on existing chain like Casper or Solana, right? Whatever. You decided that it needs its own blockchain. Why so? Like, what was the reason behind building entire blockchain, right? Like, you're taking on a challenge totally different. We're not even talking about application. You're talking about underlying infrastructure first.
Yep. So that's actually a great segue, because the reason why we've done that is a few reasons. One, we think it needs to be node-based in terms of the actual infrastructure of what we're running. So we wanted to be able to offer those nodes to everyone. The third part is, and you'll probably know this intuitively without necessarily have stated it prior, but the projects that tend to work the most are the projects that work within their own ecosystem. Okay, so they're usually high transaction, high rate of use chains. So just as an example, I'm just going to use Solana, Litecoin. I'm even going to use something like Ethereum during the previous bull runs, less so now. Those blockchains have, traditionally speaking, had huge amounts of transactions take place. So what we believe is part of our fundamentals is we needed to have a blockchain that was used. So that's part one. Part two is the economics of what we actually have designed required us to actually move to our own blockchain, because we could not offer what we wanted to the creator or the user through the mechanisms of building on another chain. That was primarily the reasons why. So we do genuinely believe that there's a need to have an ecosystem that runs that we are on, and that we have a degree of, I won't say control, but influence over in terms of how we've designed it, so that the protocol is pushed in the right direction. That protocol will eventually take on in life, of course, as they all do. But in the initial steps forward, we wanted to push the baby in the right direction.
The reason I was asking is, there is a player in the game, right? Nostr is not built on Bitcoin, but it's got some integration with Bitcoin as far as I know. And Nostr's entire vision is to build this permissionless social media platform, right? And I've used it in 2022 or 2023, I believe. We'll discuss more on Nostr front.
Yeah. And so that's kind of the initial foundations of how we're tackling this. So that's the first part. The second part is social media users are very promiscuous. So you use X, probably YouTube, probably WhatsApp, probably Instagram, probably Facebook, probably half a dozen others, right? Like, the reality is you're across multiple platforms. We don't believe that our mission is about taking the place of one of those, because it's not. That's a foolhardy mission. Our place is to become part of a balanced diet of people's social media. And what we mean by that is we want to create a space where people, when they come to our platform, know exactly what they're getting. And in that sense, we become a go-to platform gradually over time as people come to us to get the content from the creators that they know that they're supporting. So that's kind of how we're looking at tackling this challenge. Key to this is, again, another fundamental, which I personally believe in, which is miners make the community at the start. Ethereum taught me that. Casper has taught me that. Pretty much most of the blockchain projects that I've been a part of have taught me that. When you have a very loyal base of mining users who understand what they're getting themselves involved in, they generally speaking don't always put sell pressure on. They re-engage in the actual ecosystem itself and reinvest their mining reward to do various things. So the initial mining boom that we saw in the 2020 period, or the bull run, I should say, not mining boom, saw a lot of miners reinvesting for pretty pictures on a blockchain and all the other projects, right?
Yeah.
That's not sell pressure. That's actually reinvestment back into the ecosystem. We see miners as kind of a core fundamental to our project from a community perspective, and that's why we did it that way. So that sort of is the fuller vision of what we've tried to look at, and we are aware that it's a big challenge, but again, we're sort of looking at it as, where to become part of the social media diet that people have rather than a replacement for something else.
So do you know what type of social media platform you're creating? Depending on obviously where you live and where you spend time on, these social media platforms. So do you have a specific type? Like you're talking about content creators. Every platform has woken up now and they want to obviously incentivize content creators. So where in this spectrum you're thinking of, creating a space for yourself?
Most of those platforms still, whilst they say that they're working to give cash to the actual creator themselves, it's still minuscule. It comes from a centralized part.
Yeah.
So our perspective is look at it less about incentivizing creators and more about giving creators ownership and sovereignty over their financial future. So the example that we use is we're a blend of Patreon, which is where people subscribe up front for content and what have you. And then built within that is a very flexible and customizable platform that will resemble in time a mix of Facebook, YouTube, and probably X to some extent as well. So we want to bring in a little bit more longer form content. So Reddit is a very successful platform that is, the threads that they build there are quite long form. I want to push towards that because I think that is intellectually a positive for people. And so we want to kind of look at that as the longer term way. But within that, there's going to be a lot of multimedia that's based in that. Now, trick for this is the structure that we're setting up for the creators. I like to think of creators as a channel, right? You are a channel. We watch you on a platform, but you are yourself a channel. Each creator will have a node, essentially. So they'll be able to set up a node and they'll be able to charge according to what they believe their content is worth. Now, I always go to Joe Rogan as a great example of everyone knows who he is. They all know he's got about 19.7 million users on YouTube. If he had a cent, everyone paying him a cent as a subscriber for each month, he'd make more money in 1 month than he would from his entire Spotify contract, basically. That's kind of that's sort of the deal that we're looking at. So what we're saying is, okay, well, there's a bunch of mining YouTubers here who, have high levels of engagement with their audience. Let's give them a node. Let's let the market determine what their content is worth. They can set it according to what they believe. And then the content creators actually get the entire reward. So it becomes a little bit like cable TV. So we'd subscribe to your channel for 5 cents, for instance, just for argument's sake. And if you had 10,000 users that were subscribing for 5 cents, you get the whole thing per month. Those payments would be made in tier.
Do you think people would pay? Like, I'm not a big believer that even all the content that I watch, I'm willing to pay. I think we've just been trained this way. I do see your point. I don't personally believe that 100% of people would be willing to pay, even if it's a small amount.
I think that primarily people would be interested to pay if they know that the money's going directly to them, firstly. So at the moment, it's going to YouTube. Yeah, I think that's part of the problem. You're paying for an actual pay for way on a centralized platform. People are happy to pay for Netflix and Apple TV and Stan and Binge, and they get more content than they could poke a stick at. And 95% of it is stuff they don't watch. Whereas when you get onto YouTube, it's just all there, but you get the ads unless you're paying for premium.
Yeah.
What we're making the assumption behind here is that if a content creator was to look at our platform and go, this is the best way for us to monetize, and we'll release here early, and I've seen a number of people do it on Patreon, then we're going to give them the chance to keep their entire reward. So CoffeeZilla is a great example. I love his work. He's a great creator. He releases all of his content early on Patreon, right? Now Patreon take a cut. So, that's how they run their platform, is they take a cut. If, for instance, CoffeeZilla was to come across to our platform and get paid or set up the exact same payment with the exact same number of people and with the exact same price, he'd make more money because he's getting everything, not 80% or 70% or whatever it is. So that's kind of the way that we see it.
On social media platforms, they're very much driven by the network effects, right? It's very hard to, at least from what I understand it's very hard to create these network effects, right? But once you create them, it's very hard to take them away also from these platforms.
So my perspective is that people are going to there's going to be plenty of people that won't use the platform, and that's fine. Okay. What we believe there are, though, is enough people that actually back their content creation and back the actual community building tools that we're going to provide them, and see us for what we are, which is an ability for them to make a larger, steadier set of income. Okay. My personal belief is that we're probably going to capture edgier creators up front who potentially get shadow banned or throttled on different platforms. My suspicion is they will probably transition over earlier because we won't have the same restrictions and the content will be easily found, yada yada. So that's sort of what we initially think, and that's probably where we're going to look at initially is a couple of creators that are a bit more out there. The second part is I think that we're going to target crypto creators as well, a bit like yourself, where the ability to sign up and land on a platform like this is much more native to you. Therefore, you've got less resistance to do it. It makes sense. It's a great way for you to earn. In my mind, that's kind of going to be the type of a person who would pick this up quickly. From that, all that learning is case study material that we can then take to larger, more mainstream creators and say, look, this is the deal. Implied in this as well is our UI has to be very user-centric, which is how we're designing it. It must be easy for your standard normie to sign up and use. And if it isn't, you're not going to get kind of any traction at all, because most people need to actually be able to find you and use the platform to get what they want out of it. Otherwise, you're kind of stuffed.
Yeah, and especially early days, right? You need a specific type of topic that people come there for. You can't have from health to crypto to lifestyle, right? It'll be too broad, and obviously people get lost. And there's no lack of content these days, so it's an interesting challenge, nevertheless, I think. But yeah, why don't we jump straight onto the demo itself, and you can perhaps explain to us what are you thinking, and if there is a UI for the users that you can share with us, that'll be great to also see.
So what you see here is Lasko, which is the platform itself. So this is how this is all the branding that Chad had implemented, which is wonderful. And then what we've got here, which you'll see, is a little Zoroa pop down. So it's very reminiscent of MetaMask, very reminiscent of other kind of Chrome extension. Now, where it becomes very Web3 based is if we just look to here, so we just click on Get Started, you'll see the main node that we keep maintained just here. Click on that, and then connect the wallet. You'll see that pop up, and it's very much like login with Google to give a comparison. From there, it's just basically straight through, and off and away we go. So what you can see here is we've got 71 people already using it, which is great. We're in open beta. A basic dashboard with just the most recent posts, a bit of an overview of what's going on. You can see that my address is sitting just down here. Everyone gets a little robot at the moment because we're working on building out the actual profile picture piece.
Is this
it's a fairly...
Sorry, Chief. Is this it's your admin dashboard, or is it for every user?
No, everyone gets this stuff.
Okay, so they all get the same.
Yep. What we wanted is everyone to have an ability to kind of see the throughput on the actual platform, because that's kind of important to people. Now, that might change in the sense that people might not want to see that, and therefore we'll create some customization. But sort of a tiled summary at the start is sort of what we want. If we just click on articles, basically what we have here is a list of all the all of the posts that have so far been made. But what I will do is just go to create a new one, and just to sort of show you something that's kind of cool. So moderation is one of the things that we take quite seriously. So what we've done is we've actually implemented AI moderation on the platform, and that's to scale and also ensure that people know that we're censorship resistant. So I'm just going to write something that I know will trigger it, because it's always good to kind of show that it, how it works. So a user comes on and posts something, and basically it'll pop up with, we can't use that. So the alternative is...
Interesting. Cool.
And it'll pop up. So we're allowed to post basically at that point. So when it's green. So the premise behind this is that AI will keep the platform clean, in the sense of there will be a published sort of, we call it the charter, but it's a little bit like a terms of service or a behavior contract. Everyone kind of knows to sit within the framework that we're going to kind of post, and that will be very loose at some level, but also fairly strict on others. So CSAM content will be absolutely restricted. There won't be any sexual content at all. Something that we're going to basically keep out. So the actual AI will prevent from taking place. So, now the positive is that there's a reporting feature that if anything slips through, it can actually be reported afterwards.
I was going to ask, how do you balance between this concept of censorship resistance versus the filtering that you're doing now? Because I think, who gets to decide what's okay, what's not okay on the platform, and how far you go?
Yep. So that's AI being trained on the charter. So the charter is publicly visible and publicly available. The enforcement of that charter is not by us. So we are not actively looking at each post and whether it confirms. That's AI. The question of who gets to decide the charter, so that's part of our responsibility, at least initially, and eventually will become a decentralized autonomous organization, which we'll set up in time to ensure that the DAO is, reflecting correct, societal norms. There is always an inherent risk when you democratize things that they can move in the wrong direction, as we've sort of seen in all sorts of areas, but there's some safeguards that we can put in play. The other part is we do have the ability to moderate at node level. So we can increase or decrease the censorship, sort of the AI moderation based off what the node owner suggests. So if they want a much more restrictive environment, that's the node owner's responsibility, and that's their decision. And you don't have to play there either. So that's kind of the deal. But for Lasko, we'll be at a very clear, understood position that people know.
Right. So now you showed us the wallet, the Zoroa, and Lasko, right? That's the platform, the user-centric platform. And then you've got third product as well that you're building, right?
Yeah, of course. So as I sort of mentioned earlier, if a product is free, that means you're the user, or you're the product. Or if something is being offered to you that it's free, then you're basically the product. All the metadata that you have on X and all the other platforms is sold to advertisers. I reject that notion. I think that's unfair and unreasonable. So what we're proposing is that we're going to allow the user to capture their own data themselves. Now, what they choose to do with that data is up to them. They can keep it completely private, which is their right and their privilege. For users who wish to sell their data, they're able to monetize it by selling it directly to, or rolling it up to something called Makadis, which is the next platform. And then they get the chance to actually sell it to advertisers. So that role itself is going to be something that is determined by the user, but the option is there for them to do it. We think that it gives people the best opportunity to actually make money off their own data. No sensitive material like names and addresses will be part of it. But you can put in things like your age, your rough geographical location, all that other type of metadata that they want. You can utilize, and you can sell it and basically make cash out of it. Now that is, I think, a compelling opportunity for people to engage with, because currently speaking, it's being ripped off you anyway. You may as well stop that to start with. So point one is don't have your data ripped off you, and point two is if the opportunity is there to sell it, well, you should have the chance to decide that at least. Do you want to sell it or not? So that's what we thought.
You think, just a hypothetical, you think one day social media platforms will start to give you that option to sell the data?
And the only way they can monetize the content is by taking the data.
Right. Do you think they will start to pay the user one day? Do you think they'll start to pay the user one day, like portion of it? No?
They can't afford to. So, and they can't afford to because they can't then monetize the creator, and they can't keep their own bills moving themselves. So I can't see it happening for that reason. So from an actual financial perspective, it would be impossible for them to pay a user to simply use the platform that they're taking the metadata from, not unless they completely stripped back their workforce and their hardware infrastructure costs.
It's fascinating. Like, if you actually get to advertise on Facebook, used to be at least, you were able to see how much data is there, based on the categories, based on the pages. You can actually get to see very detailed data, which they pulled back quite a bit after 2016. So now they don't give you access to that data, and obviously they hide away from the advertisers that data. But it's all there, obviously, and they do data mining a lot, which obviously they monetize on the back of it. So would you like to show us the platform?
So this is your actual address that is part of Zoroa, and what it actually does is it actually will pull up the total shares of the time that you're spending. And if you can just see here with the capture, you can see that there's actually some stuff that it's showing just here. So that all those statistics as well as your metadata will then actually go to different locations. Now, there's obviously, this is an interim solution at the moment, but basically it will allow us to build out of this and actually make it so that the user can aggregate up all of their data in a sensible way. So it's still a bit interim at the moment, but it's moving in the right direction.
That's cool. Thank you for sharing with us. Couple more things that perhaps are worth highlighting here, right? The first one is, what challenges you saw. Like I mentioned briefly about Nostr before. I think I loved Nostr when I used it. But the challenge I had was there was nothing going on and things I was interested in, right? I wanted to know what was happening across the ecosystem, not just within the Bitcoin ecosystem. So I left personally, but what challenges you guys saw that Nostr doesn't solve that you want to solve, right? Are there things that you saw that, hey, Nostr isn't doing the thing? I must build my own platform and my own blockchain that will solve these challenges?
Yeah, the first is moderation. So it's a bit haphazard. There are some nodes that will make available not safe for work content, which we wanted to keep out of the picture entirely. So our front end is mandatory in the sense of how you connect to our blockchain and access all of our tools is via Lasko. So that is the mandatory piece. You can obviously have some customization element to that in terms of the nodes and all sorts of stuff, but the limitation is there. And that's specifically for both in my mind, an ethical reason. So there's an ideology that we're following, and also for a legal purpose. So the ethics was my drive, but the legal is the kick up the bum that every platform that plays in this space has to do it. And it's that we wanted to make sure that our platform doesn't devolve into fight content and another version of OnlyFans, a CSAM issue. So Mastodon, which is a decentralized social media platform, has a significant problem with CSAM that it cannot, through the tech, shut down. And that is something that we wish to avoid. So we took steps to solve that problem. So that's one thing and I'm not saying that's present on Nostr, but it's a risk and part of the problem with decentralized social media.
Do you know what the moderation Nostr does? Because it's just a relay, right? So is it the client that's doing the moderation, or because Nostr, I don't believe they will be doing any moderation themselves.
Yeah, so the client on Nostr, generally speaking, has some level of filter and word salad stuff that it can throw in, and you can mod at a top node element. So there's some stuff that they can actually monitor and shut down on. The problem is that if you get a bad actor who is interested in starting their own node and their own client, you can't physically split them.
And you can create a new client, right? Tomorrow you can get up and create a client that allows anything, right? But is it a challenge? Like, this is what I'm thinking. I know from the government point of view, each government across the globe will have their own, words where what you're allowed to say or not. But really, strictly speaking, from the social media perspective and from a technology perspective, people should be allowed to say whatever they want to say, right? It's up to the rest of the crowd, right? Just from a purely technology point of view and free speech point of view, right? That's sort of the hat I'm putting on.
Yeah. So we think there's some social contracts that everyone has.
Okay.
Those social contracts are fairly fundamental. Okay. And that's what the charter is going to be drawn on. So that content will be very explicitly kind of moderated against in a decentralized way. The next part is what Nostr, I think, doesn't do is it doesn't prioritize the creator, and that's the angle that we're taking. So we're trying to show that the creator has the rights to what they produce, and they should get paid accordingly. Now, the reason why we went down this whole rabbit hole was because Nostr clients don't allow that type of payment options. You can do zaps. There are some limitations in that. You can do bits and pieces, but essentially what we're looking to do is actually create or recreate social connection rather than engagement. We want people to actually go, that's interesting, I'm engaged, and I wish to connect with you and have a conversation around that. That's the type of motivation that we're driving for.
Nostr became big because of obviously Jack Dorsey's endorsement, right? He's been behind that thing for almost 2 years, I believe, if not longer. How are you trying to get out there? Because it's going to take a lot of effort to bring more people.
So our methodology is very similar to what Casper has done from a build from the ground up.
Okay,
it's about people, not about celebrities. As much as Nostr is backed by Jack, it's sort of stalled. So I don't think celebrities are relevant, and I don't think influencers in that sense are relevant to pushing a technology when the fundamental problem is the people using it aren't getting what they want out of it. For me, this is about Groundswell by talking to creators like yourself with your community, other creators. We had a chat with Billy Goat Tales just recently. Very engaging conversation. He was very interested. Awesome. And my personal perspective is that he liked it because of what it actually was driving for, which is putting the creator first and then allowing the community to gather around them. I think that's actually more the winning formula. So that's sort of what we're preferencing at the moment.
Any closing thoughts, Chief, you have that you would like to leave it with us?
Yeah, look, we just want to encourage everyone to jump in and have a chat and come and try the platform. So please, follow us on Twitter or X, whatever it's called. Jump into our Discord or Telegram, and we'd actually just love people to come and have a trial of the platform. So come talk to us. We can show you how to get you set up. It is pretty easy. You just need to set up a wallet and tell us what's good, what's bad. Tell us everything that you feel and think about it. We want to hear it. We're not afraid of the feedback. And in fact, we've got a couple of people who give us feedback at the moment. It's really welcomed because it helps us to produce something bigger and better. So come and have a chat, and we'd love to have a conversation.
Same for miners. Miners can, because you obviously need miners, right? Proof of work project that you're building. So do you have miners? How many miners are there? And I'm sure, given Casper community is going to listen to this, and they love mining, can miners come and join the network, or is it not for them yet?
Yeah, no, absolutely. It's open. It's free to join. We have a couple of hundred people mining at the moment, based on what I can see, active wallets. We'd love anyone who has a couple of GPUs hanging around, for them to jump in and actually have a go. So please come and have a chat and have a mine. Join a pool.